So as I said, I jacked up the truck just so I could reach it in a little bit easier. And we're going to get the 15 millimeter socket. You want to make sure it's a 6-point. And then you break it loose. And you're going to slide your pan underneath there. With this oil pan, you're going to make sure that the lift is up there or it'll overflow with oil. You always got to make sure you have your rag handy, because you'll probably get a little bit on your fingers. I don't normally wear gloves. Probably should with oil, but I don't. Alright, so I'm pushing it up as I'm turning it so it's loose. Okay, the oil is not hot, but it is warm. So we'll go ahead and let that drain. And then we'll come back and put the plug back in, and I'll show you how to take out the oil filter. Okay, so as the oil is draining below, just go over the truck real quick. It requires the Dexos 2 SAE 5W30, and since I'm draining the oil, I'm just going to loosen this cap and just let it set in there. And then I don't know if you can see in the back, the yellow is the dipstick. I'm just going to pull that out a little bit just so it gets some air, so it drains a little bit easier. And then right up front is the oil filter, and I don't have the metric, but it's I'm using an 1 1/8 inch. I should use a 6-point socket on this. As you can see, it does fit a little bit loose, but I changed the oil rather regular, and it does come out fairly easy. It's a little bit tight because it's plastic threads on metal. So I just turn it easy, and once again, it's plastic threads on metal threads, so you want to be careful. You don't want to make it too tight when you're putting it back together. I just do it to its seats and just give it a little bit of a snug. I don't torque it, but my Jeep, it has the same type of setup, and I made it too tight and it started leaking, and I was blowing oil everywhere. It made such a mess. So you know, you just want to be careful when you're doing this. So then when you get it to finger tight, loosening, it's going to drip oil because it's holding oil in on the filter. So as soon as it quits dripping a lot, I'll pick it up and turn it upside down just to show you. It's very black. Part of it is because it's a diesel motor, but they don't run very efficient, so that's probably a lot of diesel fluid particulates in there. So I'll just pop out the oil filter out of here, just kind of snaps in place, and we'll replace the rubber seal. It comes with a new rubber seal. And for me to remove this rubber gasket, I just put a old screwdriver in there that's a little bit worn. Just lift this up. And then once it's off, I'll go ahead and discard that, put the new filter in, get a little bit of oil. There's a rubber seal here. I'll wet the new one. I'll show you that. And there's a rubber seal here. We'll wet that, and then we'll put the new seal on. So this is the filter I'll be using. It's the Napa Gold filter for the Chevy Colorado. It's part number is a 100-286, and inside of that box you'll get the new oil filter. And then I told you about the rubber seal. Is a rubber seal here that needs lubricated with oil, and then also here. This end will snap into the cap, and it also comes with the rubber seal that goes on the cap. So I just set this cap in here so I didn't want to get it dirty. So I'll get the rubber seal and I'll put it on here like so, and then I'll get the filter, and then that'll just snap into place. You can hear it click. And then I'll get the oil. I'm using the Napa Full Synthetic. It's a 5W30, which it also says 5W30 on the cap, Dexos 2. And as you can see, it says Dexos 2 on here as well. All right, Gen 2. Took me a second to get the oil off the lid, so I'll just put a little bit of oil on there. It doesn't take much, and dripping it. So I just poured a little bit on here. As you can see, I'm dripping it, but you just put it around the rim with your finger. You just want to lubricate it a little bit, and then also with the new lower seal on the cap. So once you get them both lubricated, you could go ahead and install that back on here. Since this is on top and we're draining the oil from the bottom, the oil leaves that reservoir. Oops, that oil leaves that reservoir pretty fast. So you could do this, even change your oil filter even when the truck is full of oil. So you just want to go ahead and pop that into place. You want to turn it finger tight as much as you can. You don't want to damage anything. And you turn it clockwise. You can't really see it very much, but I can see a gap between the cap and the body of the oil. Maybe if you're watching it on a computer, you could probably see it that way. I haven't looked at it yet, obviously. We're still making the video. Okay, so it's almost screwed into place. Okay, now it stops, and I just give it just a little bit of a snug turn, and you're good with that. So now that that's done, we're going to finish letting the oil drip out. And I try to wait for it to drip out everything, and then we'll go ahead and put the oil into the fill area. And then once we get it up full, it takes 6 quarts of the oil, and then we'll check the oil, make sure that it's at the right level, start it up, and make sure that we don't have any leaks. Okay, once you have all the oil drained out, you're going to put your 15mm bolt back in. You just want to wipe that off. Put that 15mm bolt in. It'll screw up finger tight all the way up. Don't forget to change your wrench to go clockwise. You're just going to turn it a little bit till it stops. And just give it a little 1/16 of an inch turn to make it snug. That's all you need to do. And then we're going to go back to the top and go ahead and put the 6 quarts of oil in. Okay, now that I have this set up, again, I got the oil filter put back in. Just set this aside, put it on my rag, keep it clean. I should probably clean this when I wash the car, but I didn't. I don't normally use the funnel, but it makes it a little bit easier to use that. You know, less chance of spilling the oil. So you take your quart of the Napa Full Synthetic 5W30, and a lot of people use the more expensive oil, which is the Mobil 1. It's rated for 10 or 15,000 miles. But you got one thing you keep in mind when you're putting in oil. It doesn't matter how much you spend on the oil, your vehicle is going to burn that oil. So even though it's rated for 15,000 miles, the oil doesn't last that long, and about every 1,500 or 3,000 miles, you'll find yourself putting in at least a quart. So you want to make sure you check your oil at least every 1,500 miles. Make sure you have it at least either being full or down a half a quart. So as that's done draining, I get the other one ready. And that just gives you time for that to drain. the final drips, which isn't very much. And then start your next quart. And then while that's draining, I'll show you one more thing. On the dipstick, this is actually like a wire, but this is full, and when it's down here, that's a half a quart, or a quart low. So you want to make sure it's full, or when it gets down to about a half, you want to put in either a half a quart, and then you'll be good until your next oil change, as long as you just keep checking your oil every 1,500 to 3,000 miles. So I'll get ahead and fast forward this. You don't need to watch me put in 4 more quarts of oil, because it's all the same process. Okay, my last quart of oil is put in. So go ahead and pull that out. I'll leave the funnel in there just for a minute, just in case I need to add any more oil, which I don't. But tucked in underneath the hood, I always keep a paper towel. This way, when you're at the gas station and there's no paper towels, you can still check your oil. You want to push the oil dipstick back in. You want to pull it out, and then you can see it's wet all the way to the top. So I'm going to check it one more time. That's what all the professionals do. And then you can see it's wet all the way to the full mark. Alright, and that's it with changing oil and checking oil. And then the last thing you want to do is go back in, start the car, make sure your oil pressure dummy light goes out. And if you have a truck like this one, it'll tell you exactly how much pressure is on there. Speaking of the pressure, whenever you start running low on oil, your oil pressure will be a little bit lower. But don't use that as a guide unless you know what you're looking for. But just a quick tip as you're driving down the road, you can check your oil pressure. Okay, so I have the oil life set to 100%. And as I cycle through here, I have the engine off, so my oil pressure is at 0. Okay, trip B, I also reset that to 0. But okay, so I go into options. And I don't want to do the speed warning. Scroll down to info pages, scroll to the right, edit list. And then you scroll down to trip B, and as long as it's unchecked, and then you exit out of that by just backing out of the screens, go back into your info, and then you'll see the speed, trip A, and the trip B is gone. So this way you won't accidentally reset it, and then next time you change your oil, just go ahead and change them both and you'll be all set. And you'll know how many miles you've driven to when it says you have 25% oil left, and it should be probably between 5,000 and 7,000 miles. The moment of truth, the oil pressure's down here at the bottom. That went out, that's a good sign. And then you're going to scroll down to the oil pressure. And as you can see, it's showing 50%. It's going to be a little bit higher until you get oil flowing through the oil filter. And then when it's brand new, the oil pressure tends to stay higher. And then as the wear and tear and you have less oil in the truck or your engine, then it will also lower. But I noticed when the oil is starting to get time for an oil changing, when it's sitting at idle at a traffic light, it'll be around 13, 14 PSI. So that's getting a little bit too low for my comfort. And then I make sure I change it right away. And that's it for changing oil. Hope you enjoyed this video, and please like and subscribe.